What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Blackwater. Today, we are going to be talking about my first deer hunting experience. It was very sad. I sucked horribly on my first one, so hold on to your seats because this is going to be actually pretty funny. You guys are going to be rolling, especially considering I've made my entire life or career based on hunting and the hunting industry and how bad I was when I first got started. It's actually pretty comical. Jancy loves it when I tell this story because he enjoys making fun of me. But first, this episode is brought to you by none other than Blackwater Guide Service. Probably because we have a bunch of guys in camp this week. The guides are out running all the hunts, and I am able to sit here at the house because my wife has decided that we are going to spend a whole bunch of money to remodel the house that we just finished remodeling like 5 years ago. We're going to go ahead and remodel it again now and get everything else done that she wants to get done. And so we're going to have a house remodeling sale. So you guys check out our Facebook or my personal Facebook page here within the next couple days. And everything that I do not feel like carrying and putting in a storage unit, I'm just going to sell on here. So you're probably going to find yourself some really good deals. If you are a woman that watches this, my wife has all kind of cool stuff that she paid way too much money for from antiques and boutique shops that I'm not carrying to a storage shed, and that will be for sale. If you're a guy, I've got a whole bunch of hunting stuff that and fishing stuff and a guitar and different stuff like that that I never touch, and I am not going to load it up in a storage unit and then pull it back out and put it in a house that we're remodeling or just finished remodeled. So I'm going to sell that too, and you might find yourself a good deal on there. That is why Blackwater Guide Services brought you this video or is sponsoring this video, simply because I'm able to make this video while the other guys are running the hunts. And that's about it for our sponsors. So to jump right into these things, you guys don't laugh at me too hard. I kind of stuttered a little bit there too, so you can make fun of me on that if you want as well. But this is my first ever deer hunting story. Mind you, my dad got me started hunting in the little town of Utopia, Texas. We had a little, we had 3.86, almost 4 acres right there that my granny owned right next to us. The Felders had a little easement that went down to the river. This is all on the Sabinal River. The Felders had a little easement that went down to the river. Tough kind of to get along with those people. Not going to say anything too bad about them, but the older I got, the more thorn in the side that relationship got. Miss Felder, the wife, was an amazing lady, very good friend of my granny. After her husband passed away, I believe his name was Jim, him and my grandfather didn't get along great, but they were cordial. Then his son decided to moved a trailer house in out there. His son decided he was going to play John Wayne and take over everything and everybody. And so he and I, the older I got, severely butted heads. So that was kind of a sore subject. Right on the other side of them was another man that I honestly, in my entire life, never met. But he had a little sliver of a couple acres that went down to the river that at one point in time he had an outhouse on there. And every so often you would see a travel trailer out there, but that was it. Next to him was the Whites, Mr. Ben White. If you ever drove through Austin, Texas, there's Ben White Boulevard. It was named after this gentleman. He was a doctor, I believe, in the city of Austin. And so he had a section there with 4 or 5 acres. And then there was 2 more little sections to the west of him that butted up to the highway there. All this property is along the river. In those sections there were a couple acres apiece. So the entire length of my hunting ranch or hunting zone from the time I was a kid until the time I was probably 16, 17 years old consisted of about 15 acres, of which I was allowed to use our 4, the Whites 5, so I had about 9 acres there that I could use in total. This story started when I was in 3rd grade. That is the year or the age that my dad took me to kill my first deer. My dad is a very good hunter. Was a very good hunter. Did things a little different than we would consider doing them nowadays. Let's say he was not a conventional hunter. He hunted by the best and quietest means possible to harvest a deer, no matter its size or age, and get that sucker hung up underneath the river house and skinned out, or our shed, and skinned out as fast as possible. I will have to give my dad credit for me at a young age being able to skin deer so fast because my dad had us trained on getting it done extremely quick, extremely efficiently using my grandmother's butcher knives in the kitchen. And so that was always kind of a funny subject or topic. I won't go into too many details. That way I don't get myself or my dad into too much trouble about how things used to go down back in the day. Anyways, 3rd grade, Dad's going to take us hunting. He's got a buddy, Mr. Paul Foster, that went to the same church we went to when I was a little kid. I believe that church we were going to at the time was Martin's Mill Baptist. That's where I played my little dribblers basketball at. And Mr. Foster, he had a daughter or 2 daughters, I believe. Anyways, Paul was a pretty cool dude. One of the first, him along with Mr. Kenny Robbins, were one of the first few people that I met that were really into hunting back in the day. My dad, like I said, he was a hunter, but he wasn't into hunting. My dad's always been more into fishing. But Mr. Paul, he was cool. Had a little setup out there in Martin's Mill. And I can remember at one point in time we went over there to visit with him after church one day. He had an old school black powder rifle. He actually had the powder horn and everything, shoved the wads in there. I mean, it was like a Kentucky type rifle, and let me shoot that, and that was a really cool experience. He also, I don't know if it was him that made it or his wife or his sister-in-law or something, but he made the absolute best cheese log that you've ever had in your entire life, right? I will never forget riding to Utopia, Texas in the back seat and just absolutely annihilating this cheese log with crackers, and they would put like chili powder on the top of it. I can still taste it to this day, freaking 20-something years later. I don't know how old you are in 3rd grade. I guess about 8 years old, and I'll be 34 this year. So a long 26 years ago, I can still taste that to this day, just remembering it. And I'm huge on nostalgia, so that's always a cool deal for me. But we were taking him with us on this trip, and we were also taking one of my best buddies at the time in 3rd grade, Darren Davis, who Darren has become an extremely successful doctor. We were living in Canton at the time. I don't know where Darren lives now. I want to say somewhere around the Dallas area. But anyways, kudos to him for making it out of there and becoming extremely successful. So that's pretty cool to think about where we're all at nowadays. Anyways, we all get down there to Utopia, pounding cheese logs on the way, and pull in there to the house. We're not able on this trip to stay at my granny's house. During this occasion, my granny had moved down away from that house. She was traveling, doing a lot of traveling at the time. She was actually had her little house in Sun City, Georgetown, and she was living there, and she rented out her house, or she didn't rent anything. Okay, my granny gave away everything. She never charged anybody for anything, but she had given her house away to 2 ladies who were Christian traveling clowns. If that tells you anything. They dressed up like clowns and had a ministry where they dressed up like clowns and spoke the word to people. So there you have it. They were also watching her dog, which at one point in time was my dog, I believe. The dog's name was Lady, like a half German Shepherd, half mutt. We got it at Christmas one year. The dog was a major pain in the butt. It went to live in Utopia. Granny moved on to go do her traveling, and the Christian ministry clown ladies took over the dog as well. So that's that. During this trip, we were staying at the White's place. Mr. Ben White had allowed us to stay at his river house during this experience, and we had 4 people hunting on a total of 9 acres. So you do the math on that. All right, so we get in there, we get all pumped up, and you guys, you need to understand this. I didn't care how many acres it was at that time, right? I was a kid that when we lived in town, when I was a little kid, I would climb up in the tree with a Walmart kid's bow and arrow, and I would try my dangdest to smoke squirrels I would make me a little pile of acorns down there, and I would try to shoot squirrels out of the tree. That's what I did every single day after school when I was this age. I also would make bird traps out of shoe boxes and shoestrings and a stick, and wait till they went under there and get my breadcrumbs and try to trap them. And I caught a really good amount of mockingbirds doing that. But anyways, so I was pumped. Did not care about how many acres we had on this place. My goal was that me and my best bud and Mr. Paul were going with my dad, eating cheese logs, getting dressed up in our coveralls, and gonna hunt. And the good Lord always blessed us at that place, because on those 9 acres, I was able, my young, youth lifetime, to harvest and watch buddies of mine and friends of my dad's harvest some of the nicest animals that guys nowadays would spend thousands of dollars to get. And we were always able to take them right there off that 9 acres. It was the perfect, if you took 50,000 acres in that area of the state of Texas and gave it to a guy that really knew what he was doing, on an Onyx map or something like that, he would tell you that section, that little area we had right there, was the perfect pinch point in that entire area. Had Onion Creek running on this side, had the Sabinal River coming down this side. We were on the point, and every animal that traveled through that little canyon right there walked directly through our path. So it was an awesome place to hunt. I've taken many friends down there, and they've all got really nice animals doing that. Anyways, these flies are wearing me out. I'm sure y'all can see those in here too. I got my window down so y'all didn't have to hear the diesel running the whole time on this one. But so there's you an upgrade to the Blackwater YouTube studio. Anyways, we get down there. We get all our stuff inside. Didn't have a TV in there at the time. It's just a bit big, just to set it up for you. You got a river house on stilts. You got about a 15-foot staircase coming up to a deck that, kind of a landing, but a full-size deck, and then sliding glass door to go into the house. There's 2 bedrooms in there. Me and Darren had a room. I guess either my dad or Mr. Paul had a room, and the other person slept on the couch. Had 1 bathroom in there and a little kitchen, and just smelled old. You know what I mean? You can think about that right now, but it just smelled old. And that's another one of those nostalgic smells that come with hunting. You walk into a place and it smells old. You feel like you're in the right place. That, old smelling houses and barbecue joint, the smoke of barbecue joints, as soon as the first wind blows every year and those 2 smells hit, it's over. I'm worthless. I'm done. I'm going hunting. That's all there is to it. That's, my spirit animal is out there somewhere, and I go every year and try to catch it. So anyways, we get up there, me and Darren unload our bags. We decide that we wrestled around a little bit, just like kids do, playing around, having a good time. And then it was decision time. Who got the first shot, right? Mr. Paul was a bow hunter. He had himself a little spot set up down on the river. My dad, like I said, he didn't care if he shot anything or not. He was going to take me and Darren the next morning. And so we decided to flip a coin to see who got to shoot first. We flipped, Darren wins. And so it was Darren was up first. We both had our, Darren's parents probably could afford Carhartt if Carhartt was a thing at the time. I know I was definitely wearing Walls coveralls, but we both took off next morning with Dad. And we had another man at our church, and I can't remember this man's name, but he allowed us to borrow a 22 Hornet. And so we had a 22 Hornet, and we walked down the next morning all the way down to the river, which I say all the way down the river, probably 70, 80 yards down to the river. Dad found a big deadfall. There's a lot of cypress trees on the Sabinal River, so a huge chunk of one had fallen off, and it was big enough for all 3 of us to kind of kneel down behind it. Dad took his coffee can. My dad always had a Folgers coffee can full of corn, right? And so he takes the coffee can, he chunks it out there in front of us. There was no strategy or art to this at all, right? We set up behind the log. Dad's behind the log, takes the coffee can, chunks the corn as far as he can in front of us from behind the log we're sitting, and we sit down and we shut up. Darren's on the gun. Dad's got it loaded up, sitting on safety. This is our first day to hunt. It is not 10 minutes after the sun comes up that we hear something. Here it comes, coming down the riverbank, right? And we're in a draw. I don't know if my dad meant to do this or not, but my dad picked the perfect spot out there. So kind of a little hill coming up in front of us, river right here behind us, low draw. We're sitting at the log right here. Nowadays, the draw, in my head, I would go, that's the spot to sit. Then, didn't have a clue. Dad had us set up on the right spot. Hear this thing coming. It stops. It's eating corn. All of us are looking like, what in the piss is that? Nobody has a clue what this animal is, right? It's dark chocolate and it's got moose-looking horns. We don't know. Remember, I'm in 3rd grade. This is years ago, before any of us had any idea about exotic hunting. Lo and behold, it's a chocolate fallow. He's got like 21 or 23 points on his head. Great palms. I mean, you're talking right now, $3,500, $4,000 animal right now. And it's standing there at a max of 15 yards in front of us. My buddy Darren clicks the safety off, puts the crosshairs on his shoulder, boom, dumps the chocolate fallow right there. An experience that today would just be mind-boggling for people who are actually paying to hunt. Not even taking in consideration 2 dorky little kids going with my dad, sitting on a free place to hunt that is a total of 9 acres, and within 30 minutes of your first hunt, shooting a $4,000 chocolate fallow at 15 yards. Okay, so we get that out of the way. And we're extremely excited, but at the same time, we actually don't know if we're in trouble, if we were supposed to shoot that. Is it legal to shoot that? Not that we cared. We were flinging lead. And so there he was, the chocolate fallow in all of his glory. My buddy Darren squatted down. We might have actually even had camo coveralls, I believe, thinking back now on the picture. But there we were, big old smiles. Got an animal of a lifetime and didn't even know it, right? So we get that thing drug back up there. At this point in time, we don't want to make a big mess underneath the white's house. And we also don't want to go over to my granny's where the clowns are at and hang a deer up over there and gut it and clean it in front of them. And so the goal is just to keep it on ice. Right, and so you got to remember back then too, we didn't take as many precautions then as we do now. So what we did was we gutted it, and we just continuously kept ice shoved up in his cavity for the next day and a half that we were out there. And so we get that thing gutted, we get it put up there, we go back up, we eat a little breakfast, I believe there might have been a TV because I remember us watching a football game. So there must have been a TV. So we're kind of kicked back in there watching a football game and waiting on Mr. Paul to come back. And Mr. Paul finally comes back down out of his tree stand or wherever he was sitting on the river. The year before, he had got himself a really nice 10-point down there. I can remember me helping my dad wheel that thing back up from the river in a wheelbarrow. But so Mr. Paul comes back up, and we're kind of making a little plan on what everybody's going to do, and later on in the day after we ate a little breakfast. And my dad just says, "Hey, Sky, you want to go see if we can see a deer out there?" And so of course I'm eager to go. So we get the 22 Hornet. At this time there's 3 shells left, right? Because we had 1 in the chamber and 3 in the mag. And so we put that one in. Now we got 3 left. And me and my dad take off walking. Mr. Paul's sitting on the front porch drinking his coffee, and Darren's just kind of hanging out up there at the house. And so we take off walking, and we don't go 100 yards into the woods. And when I say woods, there's a lot of live oak trees down there. There's some pecan trees, and then a lot of little mesquite, low type mesquite brush. So we just walk 100 yards from the house going back towards the highway. And we get in there maybe, like I said, maybe 100 yards. And where my dad had thrown another pile of corn out, there's a nice little 8-point buck eating the corn. And so my dad's like, "Hey, look, bud, here's your chance, So we're max 30 yards away from this thing. It sees us kind of and just doesn't care. And so Dad drops down, takes a knee. I'm short enough at this point in my life that I can stand up and put the gun on my dad's shoulder while I'm standing and he's taking a knee. So I put the gun on his shoulder. He tells me put it right on his shoulder. I fire away. Boom. Absolutely nothing happens. Okay. So he goes reload. So I jack another shell in. I put it on him again. Boom. Nothing happens. This time he kind of startles. I must have got a little closer. So he moves from 30 yards to about 35, 40 yards. And he's kind of staring straight at us on this one. So I racked the third shell in there, and I put it right on his chest, I think. Come to find out later on what my problem was, and I don't know how Darren, maybe he's a better shot than me, maybe he lucked out, but we had the scope zoomed all the way in, and I'm so close to this thing, all I'm really seeing is hair in my scope, and I'm not figuring out what's going wrong. But I put it on him again, I pull the trigger, boom, and nothing happens. He kind of jumps a little bit to the side, and he just kind of eases off into the brush, and he's still standing there. And my dad said, put another one in. And I said, I'm out of shells. I don't have any more bullets. And he's going, pass, come on. So he gets me, and me and him jog with the deer still standing there. We jog back up to the house. And Mr. Paul's sitting there, and he goes, well, did you get him? And my dad goes, no, he freaking ran out of bullets. Do you got any more bullets up there? And he goes, yeah, let me see. So he goes in the house. He finds one sitting on the counter, I guess, because we couldn't put 5 in the gun the night before, so we had left one out. And he tosses my dad that shell down the stairs. My dad catches it, put it in there. We're walking back over there, and he goes, listen, boy, you got one more chance. If he's still there, you got one chance. Don't blow it this time. So we walk back in there, and the deer's coming back out to the corner. We walk in. Well, that kind of startles him. I got the gun in my hand at this point, just walking. That kind of startles him. He takes off running down the hill towards the river. Dad didn't tell me to do this. I don't know what I'm doing, but I throw the gun up. Now that he's a little further away from me, I can actually see. He's going downhill from me. I put it right at the top back portion of his head, which I don't know why I did that. That's just what I was thinking. I pulled the trigger. It hit him right in the back of the neck. He turned a front flip, railed down the hill, and landed pretty much exactly where Darren's fallow deer died also. So we walked down there. I was pumped up about the shot. I did, as a third grader, I did get a little sour later on when I grabbed that deer. I mean, he was probably, I still got him to this day. He's probably 102, 105 inch 8-point little bitty hill country deer. And when I picked him up after picking up Darren's that day, I thought, I didn't quite get what my buddy did. And I'd be honest with you, it did not mean as much to me as it should have. The shot really did. The adrenaline of all of it did. I took for granted that I didn't know. Okay, I know now. But then, knowing what I know now compared to then, I know that I took for granted being able to be on 9 acres with my dad, one of my best buddies, and my dad's buddy, and us to take 2 awesome animals off the same piece of property, 9 acres, in the same day. Both of them end up dying in the same spot. And it was just heaven sent, you know what I mean? Like, that's stuff that people go their whole lives without being able to do. And we did it in the same exact little area. And so I'm probably more pumped up about it now than I was then. But lo and behold, Dad still didn't know what the fallow deer was. There was no cell phones back there where you can look it up. So we just start doing a calling triangle. Everybody's calling everybody. We have no way to send anybody a picture, right? Because you can't take a picture and send it to anybody. And so we get back to load everything up. We drive all the way back to where we lived, which at that time was kind of in between Canton and Martin's Mill, tundra, that area out there. And Mr. Donnie comes over, which is Darren's dad, and we've got them all in the back of the truck, and we've got the net wrap on them and all the ice, and me and Darren are still in our coveralls, and so we take a picture with them on the back of the truck, and an old Polaroid. Dad mails my granny the Polaroid picture, one of the Polaroid copy pictures, and she takes it up. Little Utopia, Texas, a tiny little town. I don't know, maybe 150 people back then in the whole town. So she takes it up to the town. Well, people get excited about that. So lo and behold, me and Darren Davis make the picture. Our picture makes the paper with a little write-up about us in the Utopia newspaper, the Sabinal newspaper, with this big fallow buck and my 8-point. And it was just a really big deal for us to get that free-range fallow buck, and me to get that little 8-point right there off the Sabinal River. And a lot of people congratulated us and wrote in about how cool that was, and just really bragged on my granny about how cool that was for us 2 boys to get that on a free-range piece of property that was so small. And it means a lot now thinking back on that. I love thinking that that's how it all got started, for me, and that it was with my dad and with one of my best buddies. And there's a million more stories I could tell from that point forward, but that was my first one. I know Darren still has that fallow mounted. I still have the European mount 26 years later of that first little 8-point in Utopia, Texas that got me started. I thank God every day for giving me that fire and passion to continue going on this deal. And there's not much more I can say about it other than I've been so blessed to be able to do exactly what I wanted to do in life. And that moment with my dad and Darren and Mr. Paul and the fallow buck and the whitetail buck and the cheese logs and the football games and flipping a coin to see who gets to go first. It's just a story that, if I, however long I make it, whenever I'm laying there on my deathbed, it's probably something that I'll be reminiscing about. And the nostalgia of it swells me up with pride, thinking that was the start, one of the weirdest starts that anybody that's ever got into this business could have had. And I'm sure a lot of you guys have some awesome stories too. I'd love to hear them. If you get a chance, drop a comment down below. Write as long as you want, man. I've got nothing but time to read them. When I sit down to read those things, I put a lot of effort into reading what you guys say and trying to respond back. So I'd love to hear your story. Let me know what you think about this story. And if there's anything else, like I always say, other topics or other stories that you guys would like to hear about, whether it has to do with our industry or personal experiences that I've had while hunting, or whether it's feed or food plots or deer management or different types of exotics or anything like that you guys have questions about. I don't know all the answers, but I sure love talking about them, and I love interacting with you guys on this. So drop me a few words below, and let's figure that out. If you haven't, please hit the subscribe button. We're doing really good. You guys have made a great push for us here lately. And if you like this story, go ahead and like the video. Like I said, this is episode number 8, and we're going to keep on rolling with 1 or 2 of these every week. And I just enjoy doing it. I enjoy sharing these with you guys, and I really thoroughly enjoy the interaction that y'all bring back to me. Hope you guys enjoyed this as much as I have, and we will see you guys back here next time for episode number 9.